The Italian Wine Podcast is the community-driven platform for Italian wine geeks around the world. Support the show by donating at ItalianWinepodcast.com. Donate €5 or more and we'll send you a copy of our latest book, My Italian Grape Geek Journal, absolutely free. To get your free copy of My Italian Grape Geek Journal, click Support Us at ItalianWinepodcast.com or wherever you get your pods. Grazie mille.
Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and this is Voices. Every Wednesday, I will be sharing conversations with international wine industry professionals, discussing issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion through their personal experiences working in the field of wine. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your pods.
Welcome to Voices. This is me, Cynthia Chaplin, and today I am very excited to welcome Stacy Buchanan to Voices. If any of you knew how long it took us to put this interview together, you would be really on board with how happy I am about it. Stacy lives in Walla Walla in Washington, on the far northwest corner of the U.S., and after years spent in the music industry, he created Blood of God zine during the COVID pandemic. It's a print magazine that brings wine and heavy metal together in a very interesting way, designed to lift the veil and show that wine doesn't need to be taken so seriously all the time. And Stacy was named one of Wine Enthusiast's Future 40 in 2023 for this intricately illustrated magazine that offers all these kinds of stories that appeal to wine lovers and heavy metal music lovers alike. So I am fascinated about this. Welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on today.
You bet. I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much.
No, it's my pleasure. I'm so happy about this. We are way out of the box, and I'm really excited. So let's talk a little bit about how you got to this moment with Blood of God zine in your hands. You know, you grew up on a wheat farm in Walla Walla. I grew up in Ohio, so I get that. How did you get into heavy metal to start with?
I think my journey, the first domino that kind of kicked things off was my upbringing. I had a couple uncles that were both kind of wild party animals. They were into hard rock, and they I always think of like the movie Dazed and Confused. If you ever seen that as a point of reference, that's them. They were like kind of like younger uncles, so they were really cool and hip, but they were also just really unruly, wild, through a lot of parties, and they were way into hard rock. And I just remember that as kind of like around from such an early age, that having this music for then was kind of pushing the bleeding edge or the boundaries, become sort of normalized, that was kind of like my baseline. So then it was only natural to kind of like, okay, well, this is the norm. So where is the new boundary now? Like how crazy does it get, or how extreme does it get, whether it's faster, heavier, louder, all those kinds of things. So I think that really set the stage. It was, kind of looking back through where the seed was planted. That's kind of what I would say is sort of patient zero, in terms of my, opening or my exposure to, loud music. And so I would say that was definitely kind of like the first, seed was planted there.
That's so cool. I think everybody needs one of those, an aunt or an uncle, somebody who's not your parent, almost closer to your age than your parents, to kind of help you get to that moment where you figure out who you are as a teenager. I had an aunt who was like that. So you ended up working in the music industry for a long time in LA and in Germany. So there you were in the music industry and traveling around the world. What got you into wine, and what brought you back to Washington from all these other global locations?
Well, that's kind of the funny, head spinning moment for me. I was freelance writing, quite a bit in my teenage years and early 20s, where I was doing, pieces for like Thrasher. I was in skateboarding and punk rock, so Thrasher magazine, alternative press. I went down to LA and I worked in the music industry there for a record label called Century Media Records. It's kind of like I would say, one of the more esteemed or reputable heavy metal labels. They had a parent office in Germany, so then I moved over there. Unbeknownst to me, when I left Walla Walla to kind of go on this musical journey, which was around 99, in my hometown, there was 13 wineries at the time. And then when I eventually went through the roller coaster ride of my music career and came back, which was at the beginning of 2007. So roughly 8 years later, the powder keg had completely blown in Walla Walla, and there was 113 wineries.
Holy
So
cow.
almost like 10, yeah, it was like just this, kind of there was some real preliminary inklings that there was something happening here. Like in the global sense, people were starting to, hear murmurs and whispers about this place. And right around the early and mid 2000s is when the land rush was just on. Some of the wineries were getting incredible scores, incredible reviews, lots of fanfare. And so everyone came running. And that what was kind of, sort of like took me back. Like, what is going on here? I left and it was one thing, and now I came back, it was completely different. Um, yeah, it was really transformed. It had been enriched culturally and in personality. I remember, just kind of being a little bit, confused, but then seeing all these positives that came from it was really cool to sort of see.
Yeah, that's amazing. I would love to see that sort of thing really kick off in Ohio, but I've been waiting a while for that. So Washington, I mean, we all know Washington wine scene really did, as you say, took off. I teach WSET. We teach Washington now. Um, all kinds of amazing wines coming out of there. I was judging in LA recently, a lot of Italian varietals being grown in Washington and making some
Hmm.
fantastic wines. So, you came back and you discovered, this cool happening wine industry going on in Washington and didn't want to miss
Yeah.
out on the fun. So, like, the big question here is, what on earth gave you the idea to mash up wine and heavy metal in this like very wild, creative, unique way? You've got original artwork from comic book artists and tattoo artists and articles from really serious winemakers and somms and musicians and music producers. It is, I mean, when I first saw it, I was just blown away. It's a total mashup of things I would never have thought to put together. So fill me in on your
Yeah.
creative brainwave. What got Blood of God zine happening? How did this happen?
I feel like it's one of those, age old, examples of a joke that sort of went too far and then it became a real thing and kind of materialized. Cause for me, jumping back to what I said, arriving, some 8 years later or so in Walla Walla and finding it really transformed. And I was really, trying to wrap my head around how the town had changed and what this new culture was like, because wine was so new to me. And I kind of found it a little humorous at first to hear some of these parallels, like when I'd hear someone espouse the merits of some quote unquote rock star winemaker, and I was like, what makes him a rock star? Like, not to sound like a snob, but I actually was in the music industry. I know rock stars. I toured all over. Like, that person's not a rock star. I don't know. This is kind of like funny to me. I was like, I don't really think so. Wine industry, close, but no cigar. You're kind of adorable and cute. I wouldn't say that the person is a rock star. And
I
then all
love
these other
that.
little
What a great
funny,
crossover. That's
well,
amazing. A rock star
it,
winemaker.
I just could not really like get that rock out of my shoe. It was just sort of like kind of annoying enough, but it was, pretty innocuous. But then I kept encountering more and more of these like things where people would talk about habits of critics and reviewers or fans or, blind followers, trends, hype. And it just kind of kept piling up where I was like, this is the same in wine as it is in music. People have issues with critics. People have, distribution, challenges. People have, all these trends, fans, sycophants, things that make people elated about it or also hate it. And almost tit for tat, one for one, there was something in wine had a correlation in the music industry that I'd come from, especially, heavy metal was my background. So it was just kind of like humorous at first, but then they just kept adding up more and more. And I was like, man, this is actually like funny when you look at the adherence of each, where heavy metal and wine lovers, I mean, they both have these encyclopedic tendencies. They have an obsession with craft. They want to know all the details, like who produced this? Oh my gosh, who's in the thank you credits? Where was this made? All these things that they just go deeper with. And I really thought that that was the spirit, that was the Venn diagram, dead center, where it was like, okay, so they both have this obsession with craft and details and these encyclopedic tendencies. And really, if we could just get over that, wine lovers are not just old rich white dudes with a monocle, and heavy metal guys are not just like knuckle dragging cavemen with like denim and leather and bullet belts and spikes and stuff. They're really like geeks, but of, the highest compliment way. So I started Blood of Gods. It's kind of like a joke to kind of poke holes at it. Like, you guys aren't really that different. Or I include myself in that. We're not really like that different. We're actually like, if we could just get past that veneer or that little like aesthetic, we're really kind of like the same geeks inside. And that to me is kind of like going back to my punk and hardcore, and DIY roots, which is like, I love geeks. I like people that are like outsiders or think different or black sheep or underdogs or marginalized anyone. Like those are my people. And so like, in wine and in heavy metal, it's not always rosy, because there are, as we know, like elitists, and there's gatekeepers, and there's other problems that prevent people from actually enjoying this and actually having fun, which I think people forget that they need to do. It's more competitive, or it feels like it's more like, not to go super high school, because I was just talking about like, how they're geeks, but in a good way. But some of that behavior to me, going back to the high school analogy, is like, that's what bullies do. That's like what, entitled, people that want to gatekeep it and make it just their own thing when it's really for everyone. Well, I don't like that. I don't like the bullies. I don't like people that think they're better. I think that's a bunch of ego stuff. And so that's like where Blood of Gods kind of is trying to poke holes through that veneer, where it's like, you know what, this is actually not what it's all about. And I would say the real turning point for me with Blood of Gods, I put out this first issue, and it was meant to be like kind of all things to all people, where it had some humor, it had some heart. It was also hopefully having some interesting things and some humorous things. And what wound up happening was, I just did one issue. I thought it was going to be a one-off thing. It got a good response. The winery I was and just to kind of like, set the stage or the background too, like I donated all of the proceeds to the Blue Mountain Humane Society, which is the local chapter of the Humane Society. And I'm not sure where all your listeners are listening in from, but that's just basically like an animal rights and welfare organization here in the U.S. Most people are familiar with, but if you're not from here, it might not ring a bell. And so I think that kind of kept my North Star true, where I'm like, this is supposed to be fun. I'm not trying to make money from this. I'm just expressing myself and doing something artistic and creative. So I'm not going to even worry about the money part of it. And then at the time I was managing a winery, and it was, I would say a medium-sized winery, but it was one of many that was owned by a larger brand, more of a corporate brand, I would say. And one of their owner's daughters came to visit and check in on things. And I gave them a copy just to say, hey, I did this fun thing. You might find it kind of funny because it's silly. I'm totally biased, but it's just meant to be fun. And I give proceeds to the Humane Society. And then a few months later, I got this call from the executive director at the local chapter here. And they were kind of confused because my name came up. And they couldn't figure out what the connection was. And to make a long story short, they received a $10,000 donation from my boss at the time. And
oh wow, amazing.
They couldn't figure out who, why, what was the connection. And so they reached out to them, and they essentially said, Stacy said you're doing a good job, so keep it up, and here's $10,000. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would never have been able to give you $10,000 in years of probably doing this small print publication. But all of a sudden it just got this signal boost. I was like, well, let's just keep it going and see like what other cool, good things we could do. Because if that was just like the first one, maybe we can be, more of a force for good or change, in other ways, using this as kind of the spearhead. So, that really put some gas in my tank and a skip in my step. And I was like, let's just keep going. So it expanded to be every, 6 months. So I do a new issue in the spring and a new issue in the fall. So it's just biannual, which is kind of a good, frequency for me to maintain, sanity, but also quality. And, I also have subscribers that will get a winter and summer, like a fun pack, which can be anything from like sunglasses, stickers, buttons, patches, that kind of thing. So it's some quarterly subscriptions, how that's set up. And there's been a lot between then and now, but I just released my ninth issue, so it's been kind of going strong since then.
That's amazing. It's such a great story. I'm wondering. So, okay, you've just released your ninth issue. So, who's working with you on the magazine? You know, you're the creator, and this is obviously your brainchild. And I love hearing how passionate you are about it, but also with this very light-hearted sort of approach. But are you really just kind of a
Hmm.
one-man band here, or who decides what's the
Yeah,
content? You know, is there a balance with wine and
basically.
heavy metal, or do certain issues weigh in more hard on one topic or the other? You know, how does it work?
I feel like this will sound incredibly cheesy, but it is like wine where I try to have a balance. I feel like every once in a while, when it's pure circumstance, I feel like balance can be overrated, and you just need to swing for the fences and do something crazy that's more singular. But I do like to have balance because I feel like that has a little bit more staying power or more multidimensionality to it. So I would say I always try to make sure that there's like really fun things, really educational things, insightful things, things that have heart, and that way it's always kind of got like a good spread for anyone, whether you're starting with issue 5 or issue 9, or it doesn't really matter. I want them all to have that kind of vibe to it. The that will always be the case. I feel like thematically there are real subtle themes to each one. My ninth one, I would say, is a little bit more skewed toward Hospice du Rhône, which we just had here in Walla Walla. And I was in New Zealand in February at an event there called Super Wild. That was a lot of fun. So it has a little bit more of a New Zealand and Hospice du Rhône focus, or like angle. But all those same ingredients are there, where it's got a lot of humor, really interesting, insightful writing from contributors. And I think besides that one, issue 5 or issue 6, I kind of unofficially called like the punk issue, which was kind of illustrating how some of those values are pretty much the same between wine and punk music, which is sort of that anyone can do it. There's a lot of like self-reliance, resourcefulness, do it yourself kind of mentality, questioning authority, kind of railing against the status quo, the different concepts where those, punk ideologies are in wine, and vice versa. There's one that kind of had that punk angle to it, but those I think are more like gentle shading, or, kind of a little sheen, that glosses it, just overall. So yeah, I'd like to get a little bit more thematic in the future, and hopefully that materializes, because I think that's kind of nice to have like a focus, because some of them are a little bit more broad when they don't have that, which is fine. It's just there's it's kind of like having guardrails in place where I don't want to totally lose my script, but also I would like to kind of venture out of my comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. So you're controlling all the content. Then you don't have a team. It's just you, from the sounds of it.
It's just me. Yeah, I coordinate though with
No wonder you only
I
do two
you see
issues a
them.
year.
Yeah. But it's also like with the help of like a lot of the art and writers, those are contributors that I'm not doing all of the writing, I'm doing a good chunk, but I think that's actually part of the fun, is to sort of be the conductor, or I sort of, unofficially, or just the short version, as I would say, I'm like the publisher of it, because I do some writing, and I'm also connecting with people and, working with different contributors. But I think that's fun. And that's what hopefully will like, continue on in the future, is being like, a printed place. I mean, because all the content is just in print, it's not online. It's kind of by design, because I feel like things online are so transient and in one ear and out the other. And also, I kind of like bringing together like this ragtag army of reviewers or critics, or just, luminaries or interesting characters in wine and in metal. I mean, like, for example, the last couple of issues will have, as you pointed out at the beginning of this interview, like master somms and masters of wine alongside funny personalities or interesting characters like MJ Towler, which is the black wine guy, or Paul
He's a laugh. I
Zittarelli.
love him.
Yeah, Paul Zittarelli. He did 36 Bottles of Wine, which was a book that came out a few years ago, or maybe longer at this point. I lost track. Sean Sullivan, and sometimes it's even people that are on like the hospitality side that have restaurants, or are chefs, or I like to kind of have a little bit of a wider net, so it's not just wine people that are reviewing wine. It's wine adjacent, because I think they can kind of use different terminology and verbiage that's relatable. And if it's not relatable, hopefully it's at least enlightening or gets people's brains thinking in new, different ways.
Are you enjoying this podcast? Don't forget to visit our YouTube channel, Mama Jumbo Shrimp, for fascinating videos covering Stevie Kim and her travels across Italy and beyond, meeting winemakers, eating local foods, and taking in the scenery. Now, back to the show.
Well, let's talk about this for a second. So, how do you get your ragtag army? How do you get your artists and your writers on board? And, honestly, it's an incredible way to address both music and wine. Do the writers come to you? Do you go out and seek them out? How do you get people to write for you?
It's a little bit of both, but I would say more often it's me reaching out because, I have an idea. I'm trying to like follow through with it. What I've really, enjoyed is seeing how the people who I've connected with, get it, that it's fun and it's meant to be enjoyable. It's not competitive. It's not sterile and austere. So some of these people that have insanely high pedigrees, their reputations are massive. It's almost like a breath of fresh air for them, and they get to let their hair down and actually be goofy and be a little silly and be like, heavy metal and wine? What? This is awesome. Oh my God, this is crazy. This is, they're totally
That was me.
Aback. Yeah. And I think that's like very, and that's why I think, people kind of get it. So I'm like, if this person who, just for brevity's sake and, not out of sounding like a total fanboy, but are operating in the highest echelon of the wine industry, understand what I'm doing, then like, I feel like anyone can, or at least glob onto a part of it, because just to see like the twinkle in their eye, or like that, like fun smirk that, oh, this is kind of humorous. And it's like, yeah, I think people kind of forget, like, we can just, have fun, and it doesn't need, it doesn't need to be competitive or competition or territorial. I mean, some people that have written for me, have written for, the largest magazines out there, whether they're like, Wine Advocate or Enthusiast or Spectator or, whatever the case may be. And that's been neat for me to sort of say, Blood of Gods has evolved to a point now where, wine and heavy metal, that's the name of the game for me. But I think more than that, it's illustrating how two things that might appear different on their surface are actually helping understand or see the other in a new way. And for me, that's like universal, and it doesn't need to be heavy metal wine. That's just that's like those are my two things. Right now, I could be chatty with Cynthia and say, let's talk about shoes and coffee. Let's talk about cigars and whiskey. Let's talk about coffee and whatever. It doesn't, it's like we're all just, it's about the craft, whatever the thing is that we're talking about, and like understanding it and not being pejorative with, oh, this kind of makes me think of something. I feel like, when people are describing things, like nothing's taboo. People limit their imaginations too much. So this thing is, I think, tugging on the shoots of those, the idea roots that like want to grow a little bit more. And so right now, for me, for the foreseeable future, it will be heavy metal and wine, but hopefully it serves as a proxy for people just to be like, oh, I'm now thinking about how I enjoy something or how I would describe something using a different set of tools or a different list of words and descriptors. And that makes it more universal, I feel like.
Well, for me, I think you've even got a third element in there. You've got this really cool artwork, like all different styles. I've sort of had a quick glance through, a couple of the issues that you had out, and there's all sorts of artwork going on there. So, how are you pairing up artists and artwork with the writing styles of, the metal guys, the wine people. It's what you're doing is involving so many sort of spinning wheels. How do you get artists on board to sort of get into this whole big whirling pot of things coming together?
I think it's kind of the same thing with the wine writers, where it's a little bit out of out of the orbit of what's norm for them to be doing something in the wine realm is for this style, and it can be everything like you mentioned. I think they kind of like it's sort of like a challenge. Like I have a proposition for you. Are you able to do something in this vein? Some of the artists, they require no hand holding. I will just say heavy metal and wine, go. Like, what do you think? Like, or what comes to mind? And with some people, though, I will have a bit of more of a directive. Like, this person is doing, like, in my new issue, there is a contributor who's writing about the soil from a intersecting standpoint of heavy metal, which is to highlight some of the craziness and some of the brutality and some of the chaos. So it was about like there's mycelium and microbes, and there's death and decay and rebirth, and life is feeding on life, and all these microbial things that are going on, and it's just nuts that no one really thinks is happening, like just below the surface, below their feet. And so I went to the artist and I said, this is what this article is about. Here's the article if you want to read it. And they just went with it. And so it was fun. And I always want to keep the styles broad because I don't want to fall into a trap of being like super gimmicky or like really cartoonish. That's why some is more silly. Some is more brutal and extreme. Some is, really captivating. I had a collage artist one time do like I think a point of reference would be like the character Swamp Thing, but he did it with grapes. So we kind of unofficially called it Grape Thing, where it's just like this composite of like animals and flora and fauna and leaves and vines and grapes and roots. And it just looked like this really, fascinating figure. And you're like, wow, I could just like kind of stare at this and pick out all these little details. And that person, their main day job is they do, cover art. So they do for like novels and books and, those kinds of things. So it was like neat for them because it's a little bit out of their wheelhouse. So I mean, not to pat myself on the back, but I've really appreciated, and I think hopefully that's maybe an additional silver lining or benefit of Blood of Gods is it kind of like, iron sharpens iron and kind of adds to these guys' skills a little bit.
That's so true. I think it really does. And I think, kind of throwing down the gauntlet and practically daring somebody to turn their creativity to a new challenge is always, creative people love that. It's a red rag to a bull. So it's a good way to get people on board with what you're doing. So how's the readership? You're on your 9th issue. So who's reading, who's subscribing, who are the fans? And very, very importantly, how do people find you? How do they, my listeners are mostly in the States, Canada, England, Australia. How do people find you? Are you posting your magazine outside of the States? How can people, join up, subscribe? How's your readership now?
So basically, I have kind of a few main streams I think people are able to get it through, and that's subscribers, which again is quarterly. So it's this frequency that's been nice where it's spring, summer, fall, winter. It's something that is really nominal. I think it's easy for people to just say, oh, it's $8 a pop, which gets them the new issue, and it's shipped. That includes the shipping and everything, and it comes right to their door. And then when it's not the new issue, we call it like the Blood of Gods fun pack. So that's where it's like the sunglasses or patches and stickers and buttons and things. I also do wholesale. So mainly like wine shops are buying them, in stacks of 25 to 50 copies. And that's not just in the US, it's all over the world. I do ship international. So if people want to either get subscribed or just have an order shipped directly to them, they could do that. And I would say Instagram's probably the main place just to kind of keep up to date with what I'm doing, when new things are happening, because we have issues coming out. But then there's also every summer, the annual Merrymaking, which is kind of like the annual celebration that Blood of Gods puts on, that really just tries to bring an issue to life. So it has all those boxes checked, like the music and the art and the wine and all those cool people that are like in the adjacent realms, come together. And so that would be, I would say, another thing to put on people's radar, because last year we had, I think, 2/3 of the audience were from outside of Walla Walla. So it was like 15 different states, 3 different countries, that came to attend. And it was just really cool to see like the camaraderie, and just to sort of see the people that were like, yeah, you are the company you keep. And it was one of those things that was really apparent when all of a sudden here's all these people, that were, separated by vast geographical distances, and they were just like in lockstep, didn't miss a beat, and were on in the same gang and the same crew. And it was a lot of fun. So, I would say the main thing is just to order direct, and also, coming to the Merrymaking would be another good thing.
That sounds amazing. My summer plans change every time I meet someone cool on the podcast, I tell you. I want to ask a little bit more of a serious question. You've said earlier, you think, wine and heavy metal have a lot of similar problems, gatekeeping and elitism and issues with misogyny and racism and things. So how are you addressing those kinds of issues in the magazine? Aside from just the topics of wine and the topics of metal, how are you looking into these sort of, darker spots where both metal and wine, I guess, have fallen into some bad practice in the past, and we're all trying to change that. So what are you doing with the zine to look at that?
I think a couple things come to mind where, well, the first thing is I try to have as much equity as possible between contributors, as far as like writers and artists that I work with. So it's almost, I couldn't tell you exactly, but just shooting from the hip, it's about half and half, men and women that are contributing. I would even mention, any trans individuals also, I've worked with, whether they were writing or they were doing illustrations. And so I kind of feel like, for me, Blood of Gods has also been somewhat of a rumination on the concept of power versus force, where, rather than be on my soapbox and browbeating people in a dogmatic way about what they should or should not be doing, I'm just living my principles, or my morals, which is to say that this is free and inclusive and open to all people to enjoy. No one group has any agency more than another. And so that's why I've tried to make the people that are a part of it, like contributors, represented. So that's kind of like the foundation.
Well, I think it's really cool what you said about power versus force and living your principles. I think there are so many things happening in the world right now, trying to shake people away from their core values. And it's great to hear that Blood of Gods is, a force for good, using your audience and your artists and your contributors, your writers, to show some balance, as you said, a wine. I'm not sure what heavy metal magazines and things are like. Obviously, it's not my bailiwick, although I'm excited about it now. But a lot of wine writing and wine magazines have been dominated by, as you said earlier, old fat white guys, many of them from Italy. And I am very much on board with changing that. So it's great to hear that you're giving equity.
It contributes nothing. That's one of the frustrating things about it is, my eyes almost roll out of my head when I see the majority of reviews these days, where it's just like word salad. It's like the same thing. I'm like, is AI generating this? This is so predictable and it's so boring. And they're almost just aping what came before. And for me, I think that's kind of why it's been fun to have someone like MJ or someone like Paul Grieco write reviews, and they sound hilarious, or they sound like, like Hemingway or something, where it's just like, this is like really fresh. And this is like, if, I always kind of feel like, it's like the JFK quote where he's, ask not what your country could do for you, ask what you could do for your country. It's like, if you really like wine, you need to help it. Like, what are you doing to help wine? And I think that comes from like my punk and DIY background, where it's like, if you like this music, guess what? Everyone's welcome. Everyone can do something. So like, start a band, book a show, do a college radio show, start a zine, do it, start writing, whatever, like be a part of it, or just go to shows and buy the band's merch, like just be active. So if you're into wine, act like it. And to start a wine tasting group. Maybe go for your WSET. Oh, maybe you want to work harvest or crush or do bottling. Like, just do anything. Like, be a part of it. So when I see like, yeah, these rich, entitled white guys that are just like on their ivory tower, it's completely a waste of time, in my opinion, because it's not doing anything to push the dial or advance wine. If they like wine, I hope they get the reality check that, guess what? Like, those old boomers are dying off and there's no new young wine drinkers. They're all going to White Claw or these energy drink type things because that's where it's like more fun and inclusive and it seems like it's an enjoyable thing to do.
I
Whereas wine seems like
completely agree.
snobby.
Oh my God, I know. And I mean, I'm not an old white guy, but I'm not particularly young either. But I started my wine career in the UK at a time when there were no other women in the room with me. So this is something I have been trying to smash down for years. So I have lots of old white guy wine friends. No disrespect, but
There's good ones out there for sure. That's me. It's kind of like an oversimplification for brevity's sake.
But it's a good one, and it's a fair one. But
yeah,
I say I have a homegrown test market. I've got 6 kids between the ages of 24 and 32, and I know what they drink, and I know how they spend their money, and it is incumbent on us, if we want people to be drinking wine 20 years from now, we got to get these people involved right now, or it's going to be too late. Tequila will be selling and nobody will be making wine anymore. So I'm excited about what you're doing and your sort of approach to it and your attitude to it. So what's the next step? Where do you see Blood of Gods going in 5 years? What's Stacy Buchanan doing in 2030?
I think what would be cool is to see the brand grow. I in the next short period of time, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a book of some kind, like an art book or a compendium that combines all of the out of print issues. I think issues 1 through 4 are the ones that are sold out currently, and unused cutting room floor material that's great, really cool stuff, but never really had the space or real estate to put it. I do have some, budgetary things where I couldn't really just do these huge issues. So doing something like a book, I mean, it would be amazing to work with someone to advance that.
So a compendium of all the earlier issues. That sounds really cool. I would love to see a book like that.
Kind of like an art book. Yeah. Like, it'll be unreleased material, out of print material, sprinkle in some new stuff. And I think that will happen sooner than later, but my real big goal is to, get a wine going that does address the issue you and I just chatted about, which was, something that's fun and approachable, but also not just cooked up in some marketing lab, that some people are like, let's do a fun, edgy, kind of looks like alcoholic seltzer or some energy drink. It's like, oh no, like I have credibility. I'm a real person. I'm authentic. I'm not like an AI, something that was like, cooked up in a lab. And, I love heavy metal. I love wine. So, I want to have people talk to me about it because that's what I'm into.
That's very
and I think
cool.
also
what
like that would be my big plan.
What wine would you make?
Oh, that's such a good question because, again, this is going to sound like a giant cliche, but having something that's balanced where it's not so expensive that anyone can have it. I'd like to remove some of those barriers for access, but also not $2 chuck. It's probably going to be red because we're talking, Blood of Gods. It probably should be red. But I don't see why it couldn't be other wines also. But that's just kind of like my just kind of shooting from the hip. I'd love the wine would hopefully be that kind of mid ground where it's kind of right in the sweet spot. It's not too expensive. It's not totally inexpensive swill. But I think it would be cool to also, I like when people think creatively about packaging, but not even just trying to do packaging differently, but having something come along with it, like whether it was like a mini print or a copy of the newest issue at the time or something. And I don't know what that will look like, but I feel like one of the things we didn't mention that is another unifying trait is heavy metal and wine heads. They're collectors. They like to,
for sure.
whether it's merch or memorabilia or bottles in the cellar, or sometimes it's like, the nice fancy wooden boxes or whatever it is. Like, I think they like those things because it sort of deepens their appreciation. So, yeah, that collectability thing is something I think that hopefully more and more people will explore a little bit.
That is a very cool idea. Like an extra gimme free something limited edition thing with the one that would be fantastic. So, grapes that you have in mind?
My stomping ground is something I'm completely biased. Walla Walla, has Cab Sauv is the most grown grape here, but Syrah is number 2, and Syrah and Rhone varietals in general have kind of been captivating me the last handful or several years. So I would say maybe something in that vein, something of the Rhone variety, whether it's just Syrah, Grenache, Mourvedre, or a blend of the three. I that's just kind of like what is scratching the itch for me right now. I mean, someone mentioned to me there was like there's like an Italian varietal or two I should like consider, and it was something based on like its qualities that seemed very blood of the gods ish, and I can't remember what those were. And maybe I'll ask you, or we can like converse.
Oh, I could give you some ideas. Yeah, for sure. We have no shortage of native varietals that would fall straight into Blood of Gods perfectly. So, well, this was one of the most fun and the most cool and inspiring interviews I have done in a while. So I encourage everyone who's listening to check out your website, check out the magazine, subscribe. I really want to see issue number 10. I'm glad to hear you're shipping overseas. This means I can subscribe now. So, Stacy, thank you so much for what was really the highlight of my week for sure. So great to have you on the show. But let's keep in touch because this actually was really fun for me and really exciting. I think we need more people doing what you're doing. So take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening, and remember to tune in next Wednesday when I'll be chatting with another fascinating guest. Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with a daily show. Tune in every day and discover all our different shows. You can find us at ItalianWinePodcast.com, SoundCloud, Spotify, Himalaya, or wherever you get your pods.